So we're down here in Southern Illinois hunting with our friend Sean from Willow Creek Waterfowl, and we wanted to give you some tips today on setting a snow goose spread. Now there's no one right way to do it. You can do it a million different ways. These are the strategies that we use. The same basic concepts kind of hold true for everything. You want to have the bulk of your decoys on the upwind side, and you're going to thin them out as you get down here towards the tail. You know, depending on what your wind is doing, they're going to get more dispersed and more strung out because snow geese are very aggressive feeders. And on the upwind side of that spread is where you're going to see a whole bunch of them with that head to the ground and constantly moving. And that's what we're trying to simulate. So if you're like a lot of snow goose hunters, you have a hodgepodge, a garage sale spread, if you will, of decoys. You've got shells, you've got full bodies, you've got probably some duck decoys that you've painted white, you've got wind socks, you've got a little bit of everything because you want to make as big of a white imprint as you can. So what we're doing, we have some of the older full bodies all the way down here at the tail. They don't look as pretty, they're not as white, but we're still using them to make that white imprint. But the geese are just flying over this. They're looking up there, they're not looking here. So our older, not as pretty decoys are coming down here, they're dispersed out, and as we move closer is where we get into our prettier decoys, more motion, and a tighter packed group. So now that we're in the middle of the spread, our decoys are getting a little tighter. We're starting to get into our cleaner decoys, our more realistic looking decoys. We're starting to mix in a lot of the wind socks. They give us really good movement in winds that are less than 5 miles an hour. When the full bodies really aren't doing any movement in that really light wind, you can look at the wind socks. They've got a bounce to them, they've got a little waggle to them, so that's starting to give us our motion because the geese are starting to really hone in once they get to the middle of the spread and then move on up towards where we're at on the upwind side. So we're making them tighter, we're starting to add some motion in. If we've got any vortexes or any speakers in here, we're using shells to cover speaker boxes, to cover batteries. And now as we're moving towards that upwind side of our spread, we're getting into our best looking decoys, we're getting into our motion, and we're really starting to pack them tight to simulate that feeding edge of those aggressive snow geese. Where we started, you've got 5, 6, 7, 10 foot in between decoys. As we're moving towards where the guys are at in the pit, it's getting hard to walk. We're getting to where decoys are 1, 2, 3 foot apart. They're our prettiest, most white looking decoys. We've got our motion up in there. We're using the filler socks to get that added bounce in the light wind. If we're using vortexes, if we're using any type of motion decoy, that's where we're gonna wanna have it because that is the location. That's where those birds are looking to land. They're wanting to jump ahead of that leading edge because they're hungry, they're aggressive, and they wanna get the fresh food first before those birds on the ground. We're trying to hide the pit. The decoys are packed tight. We're hiding up underneath them. On top of the pit, we've got decoys, you know, zip tied to it. We've got full bodies around us, hiding a container. It's as flat as possible, but you still have to, you know, simulate that heavy, aggressive, packed tight feeding snow goose. And so that's why you can see right over there, everything is decoy to decoy to decoy to decoy. It's hard to walk through, but it hides us, it simulates those aggressive snow geese, and we have had a really, really good season. Make sure you check back next week, and you can check out some of the incredible hunting that we've had with Willow Creek Waterfowl this snow goose season.